Welcome to the Freedomist. Yes, this is the daily Freedomist show from the Freedomist, Freedomist.com. I am your host, Paul Gordon Collier, coming at you live from Freedomist.com, all the way over to YouTube on the Black and Gold Freedomist channel. And if you want excerpts, you can visit our White and Gold Freedomist channel on YouTube, and you can also visit, we also post links on the Action Batsa YouTube channel as well. So with that in mind, let's look at some of the stories that we're going to not be covering for today, Monday, April 26, 2021. These are the stories that didn't quite make the cut for one reason or another, which we may discuss in future episodes. So we have, will Biden move to protect Taiwan from China? It's complicated. That's our topic report. Our future headlines report top story is new breakthrough in photothermal immunology could lead to more effective anti-cancer therapies. And then we have, this is a very popular story over the weekend. Jen Psaki blames systemic racism for officer shooting attacking teen with knife. This is our editor's choice report. We have another story on that topic that we're going to be covering today that was even bigger. And then finally we have, after Biden recognizes Armenian genocide, Erdogan fires back. And with all that in mind, let's get to before we get to the top story, I want to remind you to go to our Newswatch page to get all the links for yourself. You click on the right-hand corner on the Newswatch page, and you come up here, and you can see all the goody headlines that you can peruse for yourself and decide for yourself what's what with what. And some of this is, there we go. And there you go. You can see it all. And you see at the top here, you have this story at the very top, sponsor here. This is the Capitalist Manifesto, The End of Class Warfare Towards Universal Affluence. This is by Ralph Benko and William R. Collier Jr. William R. Collier Jr. is the editor of The Freedomist, also my identical twin brother, full disclosure. So I'm definitely got a vested interest in this all the way around. Capitalist Manifesto will outline exactly where, quote-unquote, modern capitalism went wrong in jettisoning the virtue part of capitalism and just focusing on the so-called free market part without the stewardship involved in what a free market, quote-unquote, free market would be. When Adam Smith talked about the invisible hand, he wasn't just talking about profit. He was talking about the morality that drives the humans that have the quote-unquote, well, he wouldn't say this phrase, but to borrow from Marx, the means of production. So with that in mind, let's get to our first story here. BLM-drenched Oscars fails to deliver expected award for Chadwick Boseman. It's a bit of a hot mess now, isn't it? Now, I'm not in any way, shape, or form suggesting that anyone should get awards because of the color of their skin or political views or anything along that line. I mean, in the purest sense of the term, the award should go to the person who is the best actor or actress, or in this case, actor, because we're talking about best actor. The title is really just to present the conflicting counter that was apparently the Oscars, which, full disclosure, I didn't watch the Oscars, and I have no desire to watch the Oscars. And I'm really covering here more how the media across the board is covering the Oscars rather than what happened. I'll let you decide what you think really happened or not. Our top story, this is a topic report, and the topic report is Oscars, woke, BLM, Chadwick Boseman, Chloe Zhao. Yeah, all of that. So much in there. This being able to sustain this highly puritanical, moralistic narrative is awfully difficult, and the folks that are using this as a weapon of war against most human beings in this country are finding it difficult to sustain even amongst themselves. So the top link here is Nomadland makes history and Chadwick Boseman is upset at the Oscars. This is from the New York Times. It was a sleepy event until the final minutes when Academy voters served up a dramatic twist ending. Anthony Hopkins, 83, won the Best Actor for The Father. beating out the late Chadwick Boseman, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, who was the runaway favorite going into the night, having been lauded by foreign organizations and critics groups for months. Now, I don't know whether he should have won or should not have won. I didn't see Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and I didn't see The Father by Anthony Hopkins, and honestly, I don't really care to see either movie, so I don't have an opinion about whether this was just or unjust, but it countered the narrative that was going forth through the Oscars, according to media, both left, right, and otherwise. Oscars 2021, China censors social media post about Chloe Zhao's Best Director win. From Sky News. I found this particularly delightful in that the media that is largely using its particularly... My brother and I, Bill Collier, the editor and my identical twin of The Freedomist, he's not the identical twin of The Freedomist, the editor of The Freedomist and my identical twin, we have been debating the phrase, he's been saying just corpo state, and I've been saying corporate nationalist, and what we've really come up with is really corpo state nationalist, because not all corporate nationalists are necessarily corpo state nationalists. The difference is that the corpo state essentially acts like the state in terms of its assumptions about how it should be governing people rather than serving a product. But not all corporate states are nationalists, and not all corporate nationalists are corporate staters. There's some corporate nationalists that believe in just using their influence to influence government to create nationalism. So in this case, the corpo state nationalists, that's a new phrase that we're using because this really more accurately describes what we're talking about. They're in quite a quandary here because their darling that enables them to make humans in their image rather than serve humans, China, is absolutely, totally, and completely the very quote-unquote fascist that these corporate nationalists, the boogeymen that the corporate nationalists are using, corporate state nationalists are using to get you to accept their draconian measures against humans, to get you to accept their crappy products that are meant to create people rather than serve people. Well, their darling that gives them the economic wealth outside of the United States of America, outside of the quote-unquote West, well, this is what they're doing. While they're awarding Chloe Zhao for her film in which she apparently, I didn't see her film, but apparently the film is about the death of the American dream, I guess. So that fits into that narrative. I'm not saying that the American dream isn't actually dead, but I will say that narrative is upset when your darling that enables you to thug on Americans in the name of stopping fascism is doing this, censoring the Oscar win in China because she's not of the right kind of Chinese. Chinese state media has not reported the news through either of its outlets, CCTV or Xinjiao. But in China, where she was born, social media posts about her victory has been deleted, and they won't let the Chinese people see it. So I think there's a beauty to that. Then we got Trayvon Free pays tribute to Tamir Rice, Eric Gardner, and more at 2021 Oscars. This is from abcnews.com. BLM Oscars opened with preaching on Derek Chauvin trial. That's from Newsbusters. Chloe Zhao makes history as first Asian woman to win Best Director at Oscars from France 24. Oscar winner pushes cop-killing myths today. The police will kill 3 people from newsbusters.org. And that's pretty simplistic because the 3 people that do get killed, they might actually be bad people that maybe cops should kill. Like, not all police shootings are unjust. Tyler Perry's Oscar speech goes viral. My mother taught me to refuse hate. FoxNews.com. I love this, refusing. Did your mother teach you to refuse hate? Did your mother also teach you not to rape people or murder people? Because it's kind of at that level of duh. Well, no duh. Oscars so wild, or Oscars so woke, bludgeon viewers with BLM propaganda from Newsbusters. Well, I picked a number from Newsbusters. I don't. When I select, sometimes I'm surprised that for some particular topic report, I ended up picking from one news site more than the others. In this case, Newsbusters. You win the day. So with that, the essential point is here. It's schizophrenic. It's not as simple as you think it is, and trying to sustain a puritanical narrative that will convince people to hand over their liberties, their freedoms, and their very agency, it's a lot more difficult than you can imagine. All right. Get to our next story here. Juan Williams thinks cops should fire warning shots before stopping knife assaulters from killing others. This is a topic report. This topic report I actually did on Saturday, but it was the biggest story of the weekend by far and away. This thing has got a couple thousand or so views on our site, which, our site, we get decent traffic, but for us, a couple thousand views for one article is quite impressive. So, we're not getting huge traffic. We're getting decent traffic, but this one really resonated with our audience. So this is basically a top stories report, and I'm carrying it over because it was so popular. So our headline here is, it says Joy Behar, Juan Williams think cop who shot Ma'Khia Bryant should have fired warning shots. And this is from Legal Insurrection. And the excerpt here is, my best friend said it best. Can you imagine being an adult and not understanding gravity? The left is trying so hard to equate Ma'Khia Bryant shooting with George Floyd's murder. See, that's the thing. When you're committed to a puritanical supremacist narrative that you depend on to thug other human beings into complacency, to put people in a place of fear and social shaming so that you can get what you want, so you can make humans in your perverse image, well, then that means that when things happen that don't fit into your narrative, you will have to outright lie about them, or you will have to demonstrate your absolute immorality. And that's, I think, what Juan Williams and others have done here with this shooting, where what happened was, if the initial reaction wasn't so broad and visceral that all these people rushed out to protest and started doing whatever they were doing. I don't know if any violence happened as a result of protest connected to this shooting or not, so I don't want to say that, but I'm willing to bet probably, but I don't know. When you do that and your side has gone so far out there immediately, and you have the media that went out right away, you had multiple media outlets that pushed very, very demoralizing, demonizing, and I would say basically terroristic headlines, where they were immediately calling this an unjust shooting without saying it. North Carolina cops. At first they said she was an unarmed girl. Okay, that was the initial report too. Unarmed, innocent black teen, 15-year-old innocent black teen. And by the way, the fact that she's dead is a horrible tragedy, and I prayers for her family and whatnot. I don't make light of that, but still, the narrative goes out there. You're committed to it. You're on this side that's pushing this. Cops are evil all the time. Everything is racist, systemic racism. We're all going to die. And if we don't submit ourselves to the corpo state nationalists, although you won't call them that, but that is what you're submitting to there. If you're a member of the so-called left, you're far more right-wing than the right wing. Well, I won't say ever was, but I'll say than the right wing ever was in recent American history, because you'll have to go back maybe to other countries to I won't say what countries there are, but there's a few countries out there that I have in mind, to see the level of right-wing authoritarianism that has emerged, and how it is absolutely coming from and endorsed by, funded by, and enforced by the corpo state nationalists. And they're nationalists in the truest sense of the term. So when you're committed to lying, cheating, and stealing, and doing whatever you can to claim power, then you send out buffoons like Juan Williams, and you send these people who are more than, they have no, this man has no reputation anymore. He lost it long ago. I don't know if he ever had it, but you send out the people that are willing. You send out the Maxine Waters and the Juan Williams and the Joy Behars and all the other idiots out there that are willing to totally, they have no regard for their own reputation. They just take the 30 pieces of silver, and that's what he's done here. So you send these people out to push whatever narrative you can to protect your puritanical lies, essentially, that the world is all going to heck because racism is so endemic. All the black people are being killed left and right. And so Juan Williams goes forward and he suggests somehow that when cops come upon a situation where they see one human being with a knife about to stab another human being, they should fire a warning shot first. If you fire a warning shot, that other human being, there's a good chance that other human being is going to be dead by the time the other person decides to heed the warning shot. But they don't care about that. They don't care about the lives. And I guarantee Juan Williams doesn't give one crap iota about the life of Micaiah Bryant or the life of the girl that she might have taken or the lives of anyone else other than himself. He takes his 30 pieces of silver, he marches on Fox News, he spits the hateful lies, and Fox News gives him the place, which shows Fox News is basically token resistance. Don't watch Fox News any more than you do CNN. They're all part of the corpo state nationalist narrative. And I don't know. I think that's. I'll just go over some of the other little headlines from the top stories there. U.S. embassies can now fly the pride flag on the same pole as the Stars and Stripes. That's from Red State. Biden SBA pick serves on the board of anti-Israel group. That's from Free Beacon. And then we get from, what is this? From Breitbart, we get Arizona School Board plans superintendent retirement party, cancels prom. Indiana School District uses Chauvin verdict to push anti-racism on students, from Free Beacon. From France 24, we have U.S. resumed its use of Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine despite rare clot risk. And finally, from 24 News Around the World, Biden calls Turkey's Erdogan ahead of possible Armenian genocide recognition, which since then he has actually done. Our next story here is I want to do this. Well, you know what? I'll save it for the report here. Andrew Brown, unarmed, shot and back, according to initial reports. This is a topic report, and I did this topic report on this past Saturday, but it wasn't one of the more popular stories, but I'm still covering it, especially because I want to give some balance and some perspective, because a lot of times you watch this show and you'll see I'm constantly going after the whole BLM narrative that cops are systemic racists, we're all going to die, and racism is going to kill us all. But I want to counter it somewhat. And now I'm countering it with caution, because up to this point no body cam has been released. So this story that you're seeing here, after the body cam, I could change my mind. But as of right now, it just seems like even the police themselves are kind of like, oh, yeah, you got us on this one. This looks like, at least initially, this looks like a report in which it is very possible, highly possible, I'll say at this point, that we actually have a shooting that fits the BLM narrative. And as I said in the last report, or actually and if you want to see all these, you can go to our Freedomist White and Gold channel, or you can go to Action Bots and see the short clips from the show. When you commit to a moral supremacism, especially puritanical, moral supremacism, and believe me, the right has its own moral supremacisms within it as well as the left. It's just that they don't have the power that the left, the quote-unquote left, has to do anything about it. You commit yourself to untruth. You commit yourself to not facing what actually is. And in this case, the quote-unquote right will be very, very hesitant to face a shooting that is actually possibly a demonstration of the BLM claim that cops are racist, or that cops are out of control, and that we need fundamental police reform. When we have cops shooting unarmed men in the back, as appears to be the most likely the case here with Andrew Brown, this is a story that in general the right would not be all that inclined to cover, to talk about, and they will probably incline to find anything they can on Andrew Brown that besmirches his character, that demeans him, so they don't have to face the ugly quote-unquote truth that, okay, the BLM may not be right when it comes to the level of insane claims that they make. Many of the shootings that they claim are unjust are not unjust, not all of them, but many of them. And the claims that systemic racism is so wide, it's the number one threat to America and to black people, and everybody's dying everywhere. That's insane too. But there is some truth. There is some truth. If there wasn't some truth, I don't think that it would resonate with the communities that it targets. and it targets communities with fear and hate so that they will hand over. Because this handing over of your liberty and freedom, it isn't just white communities that are being compelled to do this. It's black communities as well, and there are plenty of blacks that have already figured this out, and that's why they're standing against BLM. And in this case, we have a story that could very well actually reflect, we do have to ask ourselves some hard questions about how policing has, and I believe, I don't know if there are any actual studies out there that are done by groups that are committed to finding out what is and not serving an agenda. So I don't know. It's hard to tell fact from fiction. But my strong suspicion is that if you're black in America, you should fear the police. I mean, maybe not near to the level that BLM might have you fear the police. But you should at the very least fear them to the point where you better be extra careful. Because a black man who makes the wrong decision in an encounter is, I believe, theoretically, and I don't have the facts to back them up, nor are there facts to counter this that I've seen, that you're much more likely as a black man to be shot and killed by a cop if you don't follow the protocol exactly as you should. Any deviation from the script puts you much more at risk. And I believe that police officers, for a number of reasons, some of them racist, some of them other things, have built up a stigmatization against the black man, especially a young black man. And Andrew Brown appears to be a young black man. If you're a black man in America and you see a cop siren behind you, you have every reason to be more fearful, I believe, than a white man. And this is something that's difficult for people on the right and even for white people in general to face. And if I'm right, and I think I am, then white people should be coming out in support of black communities to stop this, but without giving over to the BLM hysteria. So the top link here is from the Afternoon Observer. Law enforcement shot Andrew Brown in back. Several in Charlotte area say more police reform needed, from the Madison Leader Gazette. Scanner traffic indicates Andrew Brown Jr. was shot in back by North Carolina deputy, from CBS 17. North Carolina sheriff's deputy fatally shoots black man while serving warrant. And this is from ABC News. Andrew Brown was unarmed in fatal North Carolina shooting, says an attorney here, who's I guess attorney for the family. Is that? So USAtoday.com, 3 deputies resign, 7 on leave after fatal shooting of Andrew Brown Jr. from NPR. Body camera video yet to be released, from USA Today. 70 deputies on leave after fatal shooting of Andrew Brown Jr. from ctvnews.ca. And 3 North Carolina sheriff's deputies fired after shooting a black man, from NewYorkPost.com. So we got a lot of information to put out there, but I wanted to cover this because it was an opportunity for me to give that huge caveat to those that are opposed to quote-unquote wokeness, BLM, critical race theory, all that stuff, whatever you want to call it. Just a knee-jerk, like absolute reaction against is not really a balanced response. And for we Christians, we are definitely called not to be given over to extreme views one way or another. We're called to be committed to justice wherever it leads, without partiality. That means we're not partial to the poor or the rich. We're not partial to any race, gender, group, or otherwise. We seek the truth and justice, not what fits our particular narratives. We don't walk in fear. We walk in the love of the Lord, not the fear of man. And so on that front, I say, be cautious before you throw in with any claim one way or another. Next story here is, well, we're going to go international. Let's go international, folks. China increases persecution of Christians during pandemic as hotline created to report them. This is a Christian Headlines report, and I find this story really interesting. And what I've kind of highlighted here is, well, a little bit about what's going on in China in general in another report, but I didn't get to that, but I'll speak to that a tiny bit here. China is becoming more and more authoritarian even as we speak, and a lot of the tactics that the Chinese government is using to silence dissent is being mimicked. Or I'm not sure who's zooming whom. I think it's kind of a mutuality here between our corpo state nationalists here in America and the Chinese government as far as how they're using these types of narratives to assault, basically assault dissent. So our top link here is religious persecution in China intensified during the pandemic from Christianity Today. Soldiers march in Tiananmen Square before a wreath-laying ceremony marking the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China in Beijing. Okay, that's let's see what you got here. Religious persecution in China intensified in 2020 with thousands of Christians affected by church closures and other human rights abuses, according to a new report from China Aid. China's Aid's research on persecution in China last year documented 9 Chinese church denominations carried demolitions. Carried out by Chinese Communist Party authorities, affecting more than 5,000 members and attendees. Overall, CCP authorities persecuted 100% of house churches, the study found, with police summoning and questioning every church's main leader. Under the direction of Chinese President Xi Jinping, I just call him Chairman Xi, Chinese CCP officials, that's Chinese Communist Party officials, which are, they're so enmeshed with the DNC here, although that's complicated too, and I hope to do a report on that soon, how even though they're kind of enmeshed with the DNC, they're still in competition with them. The DNC being the Democratic National. I'm calling it I think it means Democratic National Committee, but I'm calling it the Democratic National Corporation because that's more fitting to what it really is. And it's part of the corpo state nationalist coalition. Although, again, even within that coalition, there's competition. So Chairman Xi, CCP officials also worked out to more fully control ordering Christians in both official state-run churches as well as in in-house churches to fly the Chinese flag and sing patriotic songs and services. By the way, this is something very similar to what Hitler did. A lot of times people say, oh, Hitler was a Christian. Well, he definitely claimed to be a Christian for various periods of time, and he used the language of Christianity, but the Nazis actually believed that they followed Nietzsche in saying that Christianity is an abomination. It's basically a slave religion. So they sought to turn Christianity into their religion, which is what often happens with Christianity. A lot of very, very bad people turn Christianity into their perverse, upside-down Christedness. And so the Nazi Party, for instance, forced churches. I don't know how much they had to force them because many, just like in America with the churches today that are signing up with this ungodly, extremist critical race theory garbage, they kind of do it willingly because most churches are pretty much cowardly. But these churches, they were told to fly take the cross out and put the swastika in its place. If you were a church that didn't take the cross out but the swastika in its place, you would be shut down too. So the only kind of Christianity the Chinese will allow is the quote-unquote Christianity that does in Nazi Germany what they expect them to do today, which is sing the party line. The party is really God, and that's what Christianity in Nazi Germany became. The party became God. The blood in the land became God. In China, it's pretty much the blood in the land too. Authorities also directed ministers and priests to synthesize sermons or alter them to conform to CCP ideology. And that means that you need to make sure that you're not, because if you preach a message, the gospel, if you preach the message of the gospel, which is that we rule through the promise of life and not through the threat of death, because Christ conquered death, that the good news is that Christ has redeemed us all. Our reward is already here, and now it is for us to live out his glory in our lives, and that means suffering, and that means, in many cases, earthly death. If you preach that message, a message that resonates with the downtrodden, Nietzsche says that Christianity is the religion of the slave, and he's absolutely right. It is a religion for slaves. The problem is that we humans don't realize that we are actually slaves. All of us, even Chairman Xi is a slave. He's a slave to earthly death. He's a slave to the heart of the earth, the very heart of the earth that he uses to bully and murder and destroy the humans that are in competition with him, just like what's going on in the American corpo state nationalist world, where they are using the same tactics as Chairman Xi. For instance, they're starting a hotline in China for people to call And this is from CBN.com. China launches hotline to report people for, quote, mistaken opinion. And this is exactly what's going on in America. People are reporting people for mistaken opinion. And the list of mistaken opinion grows. And it's going to include directly. It's already, if you have a, quote, unquote, mistaken opinion, and I'm not going to speak one way or another on this, certainly not in this thing, but if you have a, quote, unquote, mistaken opinion that homosexuality is a sin, as the Bible seems. Well, if you read it plainly, it's hard not to believe that, but I'm not saying you should, but, it's there. But believing that is wrong opinion, so they will shut you down. And that means, well, that's the doorway in, because before long, it will be more than just that homosexuality is a sin. It will be any type of Christian belief that does not conform to the very narrow, rigid moral supremacism, the upside-down Christedness of the so-called new woke religion. And I think I'll leave that at that. There's other headlines here on the Christian headlines that you can peruse, but I don't have time to get to that. Border crisis, not enough to hold migrants accountable to same COVID-19 rules as Americans, Biden says. And I'm going to call it the video version of this. You know what? I haven't been doing it through the show. If you're watching the show, then you know I haven't been doing. I usually do the video. I tell you what the video title is going to be, but I didn't do that this time. But here, I'll do it this time. Biden COVID-19 rules not applicable to non-citizens as border crisis worsens. So this is basically that Joe Biden has been doing his little executive orders and whatnots to demand that Americans follow certain rules and regulations, and he supports the more draconian measures by the more draconian states, which just so happen to be almost always from the DNC-controlled states. He's pushing that, but at the same hand, he's opening the borders, and he's allowing human beings to come into our borders, and this is no fault of human beings. I don't want to target these human beings, and I'm glad they say migrants here. And I approve that. I do not like the term, I think I've said before, illegal alien. It's very demeaning. These human beings are sojourners. And I'm not saying that I don't support open borders, but I do support that when we see a sojourner, that we should honor the sojourner. We, especially we Christians, we are grafted into the vine of Israel. So we are Israel. We are Jews in a sense. And as such, we are called to remember where we come from. We don't have the physical DNA, but we have the ideational DNA of Israel. And I'm not a displacement person. And the displacement ideology that somehow United States of America is the new Israel or something like that. I'm not on that line, but only in the sense of a nation as a people, not as a state. That we're grafted into that vine, and that vine tells us that, or being grafted into that vine tells us that we should remember where we come from. We were sojourners. God took us out of Egypt, and we were sojourners in a land, and so we should remember the sojourners. So that's very, very important for me. This is why one of the reasons I could not ever support Trump's policies regarding rounding up the sojourners that were here. And to that end, on the other side, I can also stand up and say, yeah, we should not be opening our borders ever. No nation state should just open up their borders and let anyone just run through them. There's all kinds of security risk with that. But if you're in the middle of COVID-19 and you're telling your citizens, your American citizens, that they have to act responsibly, and you're empowering police officers to use lethal force to target human beings for not wearing masks, because whenever a cop shows up, there's automatically a gun is at play. The only authority that cop ultimately have is the gun in his pocket and the fact that he or she won't be prosecuted by other state actors for using that gun against you, as long as they use that gun within their state-defined roles, which is much broader, way broader than it is for you and I if we have a gun and we use it even in self-defense. So to that end, when cops show up, there's lethality at play, and so they are willing to put human beings under the gun for reasons that have to do with meeting in private, for churches that are staying open, defying state laws. If you look at what's happening in Canada, it's even worse. And while he's doing that, while he's supporting all these draconian measures. By he, I don't know what's left or not left of Joe Biden. So when I say he, I mean the team that is behind him. He is going to give migrants a pass so they could just come into this country, where if you and I, if we go to certain places, we may face a quarantine just because we traveled in certain states. I don't know if many states, if states still have that rule or not, but they certainly did at some point. But the migrants, they could just come in. There's no testing of migrants. There's no quarantining of migrants. They're just allowed to come in, and they're releasing migrants all over the place, just letting them loose into the land. So clearly, COVID-19 isn't really a concern for these people. What's really a concern is that COVID-19 gives them an opportunity to control humans. And I believe what's going, well, I won't get into that, but I'll just say briefly, COVID-19, it's legitimate threat to your well-being and safety, just like racism is a legitimate threat to your safety and well-being. But it is not the apocalyptic threat that these people want you to believe it is, just like racism isn't the apocalyptic threat that these people want you to believe. They want you to fear, they want you to hate, so that you will surrender your freedoms and your liberties at a time when technology enables the individual and free associations to have power to determine lives of their own choosing like never before in human history. And there's great technologies out there right now that could enable us to no longer rely on the Amazons of the world, but they don't want you to see that. They distract you with this hate. So here are just a couple headlines here. From the Blaze, Biden administration releases more migrants into U.S. during surge. Texas sues Biden for exempting border crossers from coronavirus rules. This is from Breitbart. Joe Biden warns July 4th may be canceled if Americans don't do what they're told. This is from Louder with Crowder. By the way, Louder, I always want to say this whenever I share a Louder with Crowder link, that they are to the right what Politics USA is to the left. They're one of the worst offenders of agitprop, meant to stoke your fears and hate so that they can make money off of you. And they're a horrible drain on society in general. Politico tells reporters to not call the border situation a crisis. This is from Legal Insurrection. DHS whistleblower details grim scene on border, says Biden policies don't have any sense of realism. From Fox News, Biden administration stops fines for illegal immigrants who fail to leave U.S., cancels their debt. From Daily Caller. Kamala hasn't made it to the border, but a noteworthy likeness of her has. From Red State. And finally from Fox News, Biden's catch and release migrants without court dates total more than 15,200. And we're going back to our international stage here with this next story. Putin accused of plotting assassinations of Western leaders to create chaos. Topic report. And accused is what I want to make sure. But the purpose of this report, as I say, Russia West Narrative Snapshot is the topic report study, and the video version of this is going to be called "Putin Wants Western Leaders Assassinated," says new Russian opposition. So add that just to clarify what's going on here. Now, I'm not saying that Putin doesn't have some mad scheme to let loose assassins to kill Western leaders. I doubt it. But, I mean, that's the narrative. And I also don't want to give an impression here that in any way, shape, or form defending Russia. If I had a choice, which country would I want to live in, even right now, in all the places of the world, I would still most assuredly choose the United States of America. It's not even close. Because even with all these threats, even with what's going on in our public schools, which is horrible and hideous, that we have the critical race theory extremists that are teaching white babies about their sin skins and black babies about their victim skins, making everybody demoralized and frightened and dependent upon police state authority for their help and their hope and their salvation. It's upside down Christedness at the worst way, where you're sacrificing the innocents coercively so that you can keep on sinning. That's essentially what critical race theory has become in America. So but even with that, I would much rather live here in the United States of America than I would in Russia, where you have significantly less freedoms to try to exercise your quote-unquote right to free speech or right to your own opinions. It's getting worse every day in America, but in Russia, it's far worse. And Putin is a police-stater of the truest sense of the term. He is an authoritarian. But at the same hand, I want to make sure that you know, and hopefully this report will show to some degree, that the quote-unquote West is looking to demonize Vladimir Putin as much as it possibly can, not because it wants to oppose Russian tyranny or intolerance or whatever, totalitarianism, but because, well, they'll make a lot more money if Russia doesn't. So Russia challenges Western corpo-state nationalists in their ability to make money, especially in Europe. And we're talking about, for instance, when we're talking about the Nord Stream 1 deal that Germany might make, where Russia will be importing its natural gas into Europe and cutting off Western interests from making money off of Europeans. That's much more to the heart of why they're targeting Putin than any sense of moral outrage, because if they could do to Russia's citizens, to their own citizens, what Putin does to his citizens, they most certainly would. They don't have the ideational power, let alone the physical. Well, no nation state truly has the physiological power to completely control their people. They rely on and must have that ideational power fundamentally, and Putin has it much more significantly than a quote-unquote West. But if they had that ideational power, and they're trying to create it with the whole critical race theory garbage, they most assuredly would treat us maybe even worse. They would treat us as bad as they could, whatever they could get away with, because that's what power does when it's in the hand of psychopaths. And when you have a coercive enterprise system, such as we do and have for most of human civilized history, well, those are the people that end up being charged by and large. When you have a system that relies upon death as its punishment for, basically for dissent, then the people who are willing to kill will rise to the top. And that's why you end up with psychopaths, because you need killers to enforce your thug reality. So, from Express UK, Vladimir Putin plots waves of assassinations in Europe and U.S. to throw West into chaos. And this is excerpt. Vladimir Putin could unleash a wave of high-profile assassinations carried out by Russian Secret Service, according to Mikhail Khodorkovsky, the founder of the Open Russia movement and well-known critic of Mr. Putin, told BBC Newsnight that the Russian leader's latest threat should be taken seriously. Then we get from, let's see, where are you from? Where are you from? Let me say Express UK. I got a number of stories from Express UK today. Vladimir Putin trying to recast himself in Russia's next Stalin. The Russian strongman has repeatedly tried to distract from festering internal problems with foreign wars and by blaming the West. Now, as jailed opposition leader Alexei Navalny continues to attract support, he is resorting to emulating the iconic Soviet dictator who reigned victorious against Adolf Hitler. Now, that was two evil men fighting to the death, as is often the case when it comes to nation states at war. Russia could move to ban Alexei Navalny's opposition network. This is from Yahoo News Axios. Russia accused of using deepfakes to imitate political rivals, Futurism.com. I'm going to read the headline for this one. The individual gained access to multiple senior level meetings. Deepfake deception. Senior officials in European Union may have been tricked by bad actors using deepfake technology to pretend to be Russian opposition leaders. Wow. U.S. versus Russia. Biden and Putin could meet as soon as June amid Ukraine border tensions, from Express UK. U.S. military ups presence in Europe for the first time since Cold War, from CBSNews.com. And Russia court orders Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny group to suspend activities, NDTV.com. And finally, Russia to add U.S. to, quote, unfriendly states, unquote, list as Putin Biden's diplomatic row escalates. Also from Express UK. And there you go, folks. That is our last story of the day. And I want to encourage you to go to Freedomist.com. And you can get the Freedomist Newswatch report, where you get all of the links to all of the stories that we talked about, plus more. And you can also go to our Newswatch page, where you can get the daily updated, and we do update throughout the day, our updated links so you can keep current with the news, and you can have a source to look at news from a variety of... Remember, when you're reading news, always read it as propaganda, agitprop, and you can still learn truth from agitprop. You could still learn truth from lies. That's the bottom line. Don't be afraid to learn truth from bottom lines. But meanwhile, I encourage you to go to Freedomist.com, sign up, sponsor us, do all that little stuff that you can do. And when you're done, go to the Newswatch page and go to the top of the Newswatch page and be sure you buy the Capitalist Manifesto from Ralph Benko and William R. Collier Jr. Full disclosure, William R. Collier Jr. is the editor of The Freedomist and also my identical twin. It's forwarded by George Gilder, and who is a very well-respected futurist, and he's made a lot of money being a futurist as well. So there's a lot of credibility to this book. It's received very well by a number of very well-respected people, including Steve Forbes. And you can read about why it is that the capitalism of today is not actually the capitalism of Adam Smith, because Adam Smith had a lot more to say other than as quote-unquote capitalists use it today, where they talk about the invisible hand, and they don't understand the invisible hand implies good stewardship from the people who have the quote-unquote means of capital. And with that, I bid you adieu. I will join you tomorrow about the same time, about 8 a.m. I think that's time to do this show. Until then, this is Paul Gordon Collier of Freedomist.com. This has been the Daily Freedomist Show. Have a good day, good evening.